Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for taking the time out of your day to be with us today. My name is Jamie Quanrud, and I'm part of the Resideo sales training team. And on behalf of all of us, I'd like to welcome you to our training session today. And before we get started with our technical presentation, I'm going to cover a few administrative items. On your screen, you're going to see our upcoming webinar schedule, where every week we are giving you 2 opportunities to join us to learn about our products and solutions. So please join us every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Time and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. And when you view this website in the future, you will see not only our schedule of webinars on a variety of topics, but you will also see the links to our recorded training sessions showing up on this website as well. On the next screen, for those of you who are joining today who are contractors for today's live session, and you are interested in earning 1 hour of NATE continuing education credit, there are just a few things to note. If you provided your NATE identification number on your registration form, we will be submitting that information to NATE for crediting for your attendance of today's live session. If you did not provide us with your NATE identification number on the registration form for this webinar and you'd like to receive credit for attending today's live session, then we do ask that you email your first name, your last name, and your NATE identification number to the email that is on the screen, homes.university@resideo.com. And we will be sharing that information with NATE. Please email us within 1 week of this live session so that we can get this information to NATE for crediting. Any requests sent outside of 1 week from this live training, unfortunately, cannot be processed. As a reminder, we can only process requests for NATE credits when you attend the live webinar sessions, and we are unable to process requests for watching a recorded version of this session. For more information about the NATE program, please visit their website at www.natex.org. And one quick note that all of our attendees are muted today, but if you do at any point during our technical presentation would have a question, please use that Q&A feature, which is found in your Zoom webinar controls, to ask your questions. We have reserved about 15 minutes at the end of our presentation today to answer your questions, but we have found in the last couple webinar training sessions that we're getting lots of great questions, and we want to be able to answer all of those that are coming in from our attendees. So if we do not answer your live question today, we will be recording a special Q&A session where we will be answering all of those questions. That recording will be available to you next week. So please tune in to the recording of this webinar where we will include that special Q&A for all of you. Couple of introductions before we get started. We've got our Indoor Air Quality Product Manager, Ryan McCardle, joining us today, as well as Sean Sullivan, who is part of our Resideo sales team. They will both be available in our Q&A session at the end of today. We've got several folks from our expanded Resideo training team and channel marketing team interacting with all of you in the Q&A as you've got questions throughout our presentation today. And then today, our presentation is being brought to you by Chris Levy, who is one of our Resideo contractor development specialists, and he is one of our air filtration experts here at Resideo, and Chris is going to share the details of our Honeywell Home branded air filtration line of products. Thanks so much for being with us today, Chris. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today. So the number of face-to-face meetings we have has been reduced and many of us are now working from home. With that being said, we need to still stay productive in the midst of the coronavirus or the COVID-19 health emergency is now changing the context in which we are doing our day-to-day business. We know this situation is unprecedented and you may face uncertainties within your own businesses. Resideo is here to help make you as successful as possible by providing accurate information about the virus and our solutions so you can make responsible and truthful recommendations to homeowners who are reaching out and asking for solutions. The bottom line is nobody can claim that their IAQ products are effective against protecting customers from contracting the respiratory virus. ASHRAE recently issued a position on airborne infectious diseases and identifies 3 methods of reducing airborne germs: ventilation, particle filtration, and UV lights. The information provided today is intended to help you have an informed conversation with your customers about the overall benefits of Honeywell Home branded products from Resideo. According to the World Health Organization, the virus is transmitted through droplets or little bits of liquid, mostly through sneezing or coughing. Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, the head of the World Health Organization's Emerging Diseases and Zoonosis Unit, said the coronavirus can go airborne, staying suspended in the air depending on factors such as heat and humidity. Please keep in mind, IAQ solutions only help treat the flow of air that is in the ductwork, not the hard surfaces in your home or the air throughout the home or floating in the air. Consider turning the system fan on to allow more air to circulate continuously through the vents and cleaning systems. Remember, cleaning surfaces in the home with disinfectant is an important addition to everything else. There are 4 categories of indoor air quality products that we offer. Those are humidification control with humidifiers, dehumidifiers, ventilation, HRVs, ERVs, air purification with UV lights, and air filtration. Resideo has you covered in all 4 of these product categories and also provides the devices such as T10 and Prestige IQ to properly control the 4 pillars of indoor air quality. Today's topic we will be discussing is air filtration. Resideo's filtration offering consists of two main product types: media air cleaners and electronic air cleaners. Our media air cleaners, the F100, which is MERV 11, and F200, which is MERV 13, are actually the same cabinet with different filter media in them. They provide very good air quality, filtration at high MERV ratings, and use no electricity. The electronic air cleaner, the F300, has a MERV rating that ranges from 12 to 16. It provides better air quality. It's a renewable filter. It has a narrow cabinet and a very low pressure drop. When choosing a filter media for your systems that you offer, please keep in mind it's very important to balance efficiency, filter life, and pressure drop. Efficiency is how much is captured, filter life is how much will that filter hold, and pressure drop is how much air is restricted as the media loads across the system. MERV rating. The minimum efficiency reporting value is the definition of MERV. It's a rating scale that goes from 1 to 16. The higher the number, the more it will capture. This is defined by ASHRAE 52.2. MERV is only a measure of the capture efficiency. It does not measure pressure drop, nor will it measure the effective filter life. MERV is technically only for media air cleaners, as media air cleaners get better as they load, so the minimum is easy to define. Electronic air cleaners, the efficiency of them gets worse as they load, which is why you clean them to rejuvenate. In the HVAC industry, we often use microns as a measure of vacuum when evacuating refrigerant lines. Particulate sizes are also measured in microns. So what is a micron? A micron is very, very small. A micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter or 1/millionth of a meter. Think of a sheet of paper laying on your desk or table in front of you, and the height of that sheet of paper is approximately 100 microns. Or a human hair thickness is approximately 75 microns. So how do MERV ratings compare with effectiveness? A standard 1-inch furnace filter has a MERV rating between 1 and 4, while Resideo's F100 has a MERV rating of 11 and F200 a MERV rating of 13. The F300 electronic air cleaner has the equivalent MERV rating of 12 to 16. When you look at the right side of this table on the bottom of the slide, we have three groups of particulate sizes. We have a 3 to 10 micron group, a 1 to 3 micron, and a 0.3 to 1 micron group being the smallest. On the right side of this table, we see a standard 1-inch filter and what is caught in regards to these three particulate group sizes. Of the largest group size, the 3 to 10 microns, the 1-inch filter is only going to catch approximately 20% of the largest group. Looking to the left, we can see that the F100 catches up to 96% and of these particle sizes, and the F200 catches up to 97% of these particle sizes. As the particles get smaller in size to group 2, the 1-inch filter is only catching 5 to 15%, and the maximum at a maximum, and 5% of the 0.3 to 1 micron particle size. As you move to the left, you can see how the capture rate dramatically increases when you move from a 1-inch standard filter to a F100 or F200 media air cleaner. The efficiency at particle size. So we've talked about the three groups of particulate size and how effective our filters are in catching these particles. But what do these groups mean? What do they look like? If you look at the top of the screen, you can see group 3, our largest category size, includes things like dust, pollen, and large mold spores. When you move to group 2, which is smaller in size than 3, you will add to it mold spores, dander, and allergens. Group 1, the smallest group of particulates, which include bacteria, tobacco smoke, and smog. On our top left of this screen, it shows a 1-inch standard throwaway fiberglass filter, and our table showing how it isn't very effective in capturing group 3 particles. When you move down to the yellow row, you will see the effectiveness of the F100, and below that in the blue row, the F200 is capturing all 3 particle groups. This is an excellent visual on the types of particles a 1-inch fiberglass filter, low-cost 4-inch filter, and F100 and F200 media are capable of catching, and a good comparison of them. As you move down the image, you can see all 3 filters will collect lint, household dust, and pollen. However, the F100 and F200 can capture these items and will also capture dust mite debris, mold spores, and pet dander, smoke and smog, and people's coughs and sneezes. The F200 also captures bacteria and virus carriers. This slide ultimately shows how a 1-inch fiberglass filter's job is primarily just to protect the HVAC equipment. A media air cleaner is not only going to do that, but it's going to protect the people living in the home as well. So how does air filtration work in a ducted system? Let's imagine the blower and ductwork are the lungs of your home. This air traveled through the return duct and is pushed out of the supply duct back into the home. So as the air travels through the return into the supply, it passes through the electronic or media air cleaner and gets trapped onto that filter, cleaning the air and providing better air and healthier air into the home. How do media air cleaners clean the air? Basically, it's done in 3 stages or 3 steps. The first step as the air passes through is called straining. That's where the very large particles are immediately captured. Stage 2, which is diffusion, is where the particles that make it past stage 1 basically collide with air molecules and get jostled around, which is kind of what the image is showing here, and then is caught by the media, which is called impaction, allowing clean air to pass through the filter and onto the system and back into the living space. How does that compare to how an electronic air cleaner works? Essentially, the air passes through the same way, we go into the filter screen where the big particles are caught by the pre-filter. But now we have two stages of capture. Stage one is charging the particles, either positively or negatively. And then stage two is for those particles to be trapped onto the plates of the electronic air cleaner cell, kind of like how magnets work. Lastly, the electronic air cleaner's air passes through that, and anything remaining is caught by the post-filter screen before it enters the system and back into the living space. So filter life, how much will a filter hold? So remember, in the upper left-hand corner here, we're trying to keep a balance between efficiency, filter life, and pressure drop. Another characteristic, or media air cleaners, will last longer than a typical 1-inch filter, and the reason being is the F100 and F200 have a 4-inch media filter, which provides more surface area for particulates to load. If you were to look at a 16 by 25 by 1-inch pleated filter, what you see is what you get regarding surface area. However, if you were to take apart a media filter, a 4-inch media filter, and have one person hold it and stretch it across, the media would be multiple feet in surface area. This is why these filters do not need to be changed as often as 1-inch filters. This is also why some 1-inch filters with high MERV ratings load so quickly and cause damage to people's systems. Resideo recommends changing filters once every 6 to 12 months. The frequency of the filter change will depend on the home's conditions and the run rate of the blower. Ultimately, we don't want the filter life to go beyond 1 year or to see a pressure drop across the filter that exceeds 0.5 inches of water column. The pressure drop shown above on this slide is at 500 feet per minute, which we will discuss on our upcoming slides. On this slide, we are showing the given pressure drops on our media air cleaners at different sizes of filter box and different airflows in CFM. As you push more air through any given filter box, the pressure drop will also increase. The greater the airflow, the greater the pressure drop. So the larger the filter, the more airflow it can handle with less impact on pressure drop. You certainly wouldn't want to put 2000 CFM through a 16 by 20 media cabinet, as the pressure drop would be off the charts. However, putting a larger filter box than needed on a piece of equipment is okay, given you have space during your installation to do so. These images can be found on our installation instructions, and it is important to reference these when sizing the filter box to your system. Honeywell home branded media air filter options include the F100 and F100 in 6 popular sizes and the F200 in the 4 popular sizes shown here. When we look at electronic air cleaners and the airflow through them, here we have 2 graphs showing the illustration of pressure drop as the CFM increases. One with a post filter and one without. The post filter is optional and will increase the efficiency of your air cleaner. The same rules do apply in regards to pressure drop. The greater the airflow, the greater the pressure drop. So the larger the filter, the more airflow it can handle with less impact on your pressure drop. Again, these charts are listed in the installation instructions and should be consulted when sizing appropriately for your system. Honeywell home branded electronic air cleaners come in 4 popular sizes, and they include both the post filter and pre-filter. What other solutions are available that clean the air? Well, the average person breathes approximately 20,000 times per day, so helping homeowners to reduce particles remains our priority. Whole house media and electronic air cleaners can capture a significant amount of airborne particles as they pass through the system compared to a standard 1-inch filter. If you want to take that up a notch, add a UV light. That'll provide better captured and cleaner air all the way through the home, and a great byproduct is a clean coil. Resideo also offers replacement filters and filter products and resources. Following this webinar, we will include a survey that will have links to some documents. One of them will be our filter replacement guide. We offer pop-up media filters as one replacement option. The great part about the pop-up is it requires no assembly. You take it out of the box, cut the band, and stretch it out, and it snaps into place. The nice part about the pop-up media is it stores nicely on your truck. 5 filters fit in the space of one standard media filter. They are MERV 11, have a 6 to 12 month life, and have low pressure drop as they load. We also offer an assortment of standard media filters that fit Honeywell home and competitive brand media air cleaner cabinets. Our SKUs also include specific ones for Train Perfect Fit media air cleaners. The main difference being the Honeywell home versions are a MERV 10 versus the MERV 8 offered from the Perfect Fit. Additionally, we have return air grill filters. These are our FC40 and FC313 return air filters. They come in 18 popular sizes to fit most applications. The neat thing about our return air filters is they fit in the place of where a normal 1-inch return filter goes, but offers a 4-inch media filter, which is 3 times the life as a standard 1-inch filter, with a MERV rating of MERV 10 for our FC40 and MERV 13 for the FC313. Please remember these systems are most effective when the fan is set to on or circulate. To help the HVAC pro, Resideo not only has products you can offer to provide better indoor air quality, we also offer the Air Cycle Monitor and training program to give you the data you need to confidently sell IAQ solutions in the home. You can learn more about this from visiting with your local sales rep or stop at resideo.com/aircycle.
Thanks so much, Chris. So you can find information on all the products we've covered today, including information on our entire product portfolio at the new resideo.com, featured here on this slide. Now we're going to cover some of our most commonly asked questions about air filtration. Ryan McCardle, who is our IAQ product manager, is going to join us, as well as Sean Sullivan, who is part of our Resideo sales team. They're both going to jump in here to help Chris answer some of these questions.
Hey, Ryan.
What's on, Chris?
First question we have in our common questions is, can a media air cleaner or electronic air cleaner be private labeled?
It absolutely can. So you guys have the ability to actually create custom labels that can go on the filter cabinets that you talked about earlier. You can customize per a logo or a design or some type of verbiage that you want. And we'll create those labels for you and send them out for you to put them on the cabinet.
Awesome. I will add that the document that we're showing on this slide will be included in one of the web links in follow-up to this presentation.
Yeah, and you can see the bottom left-hand corner of this slide here is kind of an example of what those labels look like.
Our next question is, when do media air cleaner filters need to be replaced?
So, and I saw that in the chat box. A couple of people asked this question, so it's good that we're hitting it here. Let's talk about the typical 4-inch media filters, like the F100s and the F200s. We recommend typically a range of 6 to 12 months, and I know that's a large range, right, for replacement, because it's all really dependent upon the household or the application of which these are going in. It's really kind of the analogy that I like to use is, how often do you change the tires on your car? Well, it's depending upon, how you drive and how much you drive. Same thing with filters. The replacement rate of when you need to change a filter is dependent upon, how many people are living in the house, if there's any pets, if there's any people that smoke. Really all of those variables in the environment that are going to affect what's in your air. So, 6 to 12 months is the recommendation. And then I also believe, and Chris and Sean, you can confirm this, but once you reach a maximum pressure drop of 0.5 inches water column, you're going to for sure want to replace the filter at that time as well.
For sure. Our next question is, why can a media air cleaner filter last longer than a typical 1-inch throwaway type?
So that's a good question. So the 1-inch versus the 4-inch media filter, you can imagine that the pleats on the 4-inch are much deeper. There's much more material within that 4-inch media. So there's more surface area, and there's more material for particles and dust and things in the air to get captured in. And because of that, there is more room for air to flow through. So as things build up within that filter, the pressure drop doesn't dramatically decrease as you would see when things get collected and caught up in those typical 1-inch media filters where there isn't as much material as we have in our 4-inch.
Great, thank you. Our next question is regarding maintenance of electronic air cleaners.
So, the typical media filters are throwaway filters, whether it's a 1-inch or a 4-inch filter. The electronic air cleaner, as we're showing here, is actually reusable, washable, and that's what we actually recommend. The cells and the pre-filter that are with the filters can be taken out and cleaned. Per recommendations on cleaning, I believe we have in our installation instructions, but some of the things that we've seen people do is putting in dishwashers, rinsing off in the bathtub, or taking out into the driveway with a hose, are all acceptable. Just make sure and ensure that there's going to be no damage to the components within the systems. There's some thin wires and electrical components that you want to make sure that you don't damage while cleaning. In addition to, you want to make sure that if you are going to use a detergent, I believe we recommend not to, but if you do use a soap or a detergent, that it is safe and isn't going to damage any of the materials or the components on the cells or the filter. There is a post filter that is included, or not included, but an optional upgrade for the F300 or the electronic air cleaner. That is a bluish type polyethylene filter that is throwaway. You don't want to reuse or replace that.
Just to be clear, the post filter is actually included in the SKUs we offer today. At one time, it was optional. If the homeowner chooses not to replace the post filter, that's okay. But if they do, it reduces the efficiency of capture. All right. Sean, what are things looking like for our live questions?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we had a number of questions come in from the chat, and we had hit on some of them. Some of the other ones that are open, I'd like to start with one that was on the electronic air cleaner in regards to the MERV equivalency rating. So we had said earlier in our presentation that the electronic air cleaner, our F300, has an equivalent MERV rating of 12 to 16. That's quite a larger gap. The question was why, and do we offer a MERV 16?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Any electronic, if you notice the nuance of that, we said MERV equivalent, right? Any electronic air cleaner, regardless of manufacturer, doesn't actually have a MERV rating. It's because the media or electronic air cleaners aren't rated on that system, so they're actually MERV equivalent. And the reason for the gap between the 16, the 12 and 16 that Chris talked, or that Sean talked, no, Chris, you talked about, is because over time, as those media cells or those electronic cells begin to gather dust and particles and things like that, the capture rate actually decreases with the electronic air cleaner. So that's why we list the spec between 12 and 16 equivalent MERV rating.
Excellent. Another question that came in is how can you tell if the filter is greater than a 1/2 inch water column or higher across the pressure drop of the filter?
Yeah, so you actually have to use, I believe it's a hydrometer. There's a tool that you can use to test the pressure differential between both sides of the filter. If you measure that, you're actually measuring the pressure drop before and after the filter. And if that rating is higher than 0.5 inches water, then you know you got to change out your filter.
Excellent. Another question that came in, is there any consideration of making a 25 by 16 F100 cabinet? This individual runs into quite a decent number of applications where this would be useful.
You know, that's something that we can certainly look into. You know, work with your local sales rep, and I'll work with that person to figure out what that opportunity is, and then we can move forward from there. Excellent.
Another question is, do we have a MERV rating on the post filter of the electronic air cleaner?
So that we do not have a specific MERV rating just for the post filter, as the post filter is not supposed to be used as a standalone device. It is only supposed to be used in conjunction with the F300 to increase the efficiency of the F300 itself.
Okay. And then another question we had from the audience. The M8 throwaway filters that individual sells have been up to M10, so it sounds like they've been upgraded. I was told the rating system has changed. Did that change for your filters too?
So I don't know about competitor products, and I'm not going to comment on their products because I'm not an expert on theirs, but I do not believe the MERV rating system has changed. They may have changed, specifically this manufacturer may have changed the rating at which they test their filters at in terms of flow rate. However, the spec in terms of MERV, of the size of the particles captured in the filter, has not changed, at least to my knowledge.
Perfect. Here's a question. Any chance of a static pressure probe that would connect to the Prestige IAQ or T10 that will report? Ryan, if you don't mind me answering this one.
Yeah, go for it.
So the T10 is a thermostat that we had pictured in the previous slide. That thermostat does have S terminals for an input. However, it doesn't currently have the software to accept a pressure switch as an input. However, the Prestige IAQ does have that software to where you can wire in a dry contact pressure switch to one of the 4 S terminal inputs and program it on the thermostat that when it sees contact closure, it's time to replace that filter. Another question, how close and or comparable is a 4-inch MERV 12 plus UV in comparison to an electronic F300?
So, you know, per the specs that we talked about, the F300 has that equivalent MERV rating of 12 to 16. So the F200, which has that MERV 13 rating on it, is going to be at the lower end of the spectrum of what the F300 can capture in terms of your airborne contaminants. So that's the stuff that's floating around in your air, like your dust particles and hair and dander and things like that. So it's not going to have as high of a capture efficiency as you would with an F300. When you pair both of those products with a UV light, that's where the UV light is actually going to take care of those things that the filters, both filters, are going to miss. You know, like things like mold spores, viruses and bacteria, VOCs, things that aren't going to get caught up in that filter itself. And then also the UV. You know, remember, let's make sure that we remember this, that it's going to keep the coil clean as long as it's the coil is in contact with that UVC light.
Okay. Another 2 questions in regards to the electronic air cleaner. One would be under normal circumstances, what is our life expectancy of the F300? And the other would be, how does cigarette smoke affect the F300, and what is the proper cleaning measures to actually get the film of that cigarette smoke off the cells?
All right, so I have to take those one at a time, because I believe the first one was life expectancy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay. So for the F300, I believe this product is still under a 5-year warranty. So, you know, want to throw that out there, that if there's any issues with this product within that warranty period, you know, we will absolutely cover that. in coordination with, we do offer a 10-year clean coil guarantee. So when the F300 is used in conjunction with a UV light, we guarantee that it's going to work and it's going to keep your coil clean for at least 10 years. And I believe you had a second question there, Sean.
And that was in regards to cigarette smoke. How does that impact the electronic air cleaner? And what are our suggestions? And we might be able to go back a slide on in regards to how to clean the media air cleaner, the film a cigarette smoke would impact.
Yeah, so I can provide a little bit of information. Cigarette smoke is actually a particle. Just like dust or anything like that, it's just a little bit more, much more finer or smaller. So it will get smoke will get captured within the F300. I'm actually gonna lean on Chris because I think he can provide a really good example of cleaning, because I believe he's had one that he's actually cleaned himself.
Chris,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was muted. I appreciate the host for unmuting me. Yeah, actually, a couple of things about the F300 regarding longevity. You're absolutely right. The 5-year warranty is terrific. The 10-year clean coil guarantee gives you a solid expectation of a lifespan that would equate to that. Working in this role for a number of years, I've seen many contractors come back to me and asking for help with parts on electronic air cleaners that still have been working for upwards of close to 20 years. So if they're taken care of, they will work for a long time. As far as cleaning them, I've had one. My dad had one in his house. Cleaning them in the laundry tub, cleaning them in a dishwasher, those are all acceptable methods. The key here is to make sure, it's, in my opinion, running the water past it is great. You don't need to add detergent. If you do, it should be not abrasive. The other thing is make sure that the wires on the cells are not bent or damaged in any way, depending on how you're cleaning it. Sean?
Chris. Another question that came in, the electronic air cleaner, there's a jumper installed that can be factory cut that will reduce the amount of ozone that the unit actually does produce. And how much does that cutting of the jumper actually reduce? Ryan, I do have the documentation available if you don't mind me answering this.
Oh, absolutely. Go for it.
Great. So yeah, the F300 electronic air cleaner, it does generate a small amount of ozone during your normal operation. This might seem a little more increased during the first or 2 weeks of operation. But however, if you want to reduce that amount, there is a jumper, which is referred to as J8 on the shorting bar. If you cut that, it will reduce the ozone production between about 20 to 25%. But keep in mind that will also reduce your efficiency of the air cleaner from 7 to 10%. Another question that has come in is, let me see here. We've got a lot of questions coming in right now. A couple questions on UV lights in regards to what is the impact of a UV light on a filter. And then how does a 10-year coil guarantee apply to brand new coils?
So both good questions. I'm going to answer the UV one first because that was the first one that was asked. We want to make sure, or you guys want to make sure that when you're installing UV lights, any system that has a UVC light in it, if there are components or parts in the system that are in contact with that UVC light, you want to make sure that those parts and materials are UVC rated. Otherwise, the UVC lights will degrade that material over time. Specifically, what I have in mind is, electrical insulation, rubbers, things like that. That if they're not UVC rated, will degrade over time. Specifically, in regards to the F100, 200, and 300 here that we talked about, these are not UVC rated. So you either want to make sure that you install the UV light not in direct line of sight of the filtration system, or if you do install it in direct line of sight of the UV system, that you use a light shield.
Perfect.
And then there was another question you had there, Sean.
Yes, that was in regards to pairing a UV light and a filtration device, either a media air cleaner or electronic air cleaner. How does the 10-year clean cool guarantee work and apply on brand new coils?
Still applies to brand new coils. You just got to make sure that it was installed and inspected by the contractor that did that install. I do want to make sure that I reiterate that filters are to remove those floaty things that are in the air that we can kind of all see when the beam of sun comes through the window on a Sunday afternoon. Think of your hair, dust, and pollen and things like that. UV light is really to capture those less things that we can't really see as much in the air: bacteria, mold, viruses, and for keeping your coil clean. So 2 different solutions, 2 different products for two different problems and applications.
Perfect. Seems like we got quite a few questions on UV and filtration and pairing it together. One question was, you're recommending the UV be after the coil, correct? I'll go ahead and take that one. So the UV lights, they can be either installed on the return duct and or the supply duct. If you go on the supply above the coil, given that you have an evaporator coil and it's not a heat pump orientation, you're not only going to have air exposure from the supply, but you're also be keeping the coil clean. Whereas the return duct, it's more just a matter of purificating the air going through the return. But again, as Ryan noted, you have to keep that away from devices that aren't UV protected. The other question, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
I want to add on a little bit to the UV, because there seems to be a lot of UV stuff coming in. I want to make it known to all of our audience here that last week we did a full webinar on UV products here. So make sure that you guys go and check those out, because I'm sure a lot of your guys' questions that are being asked and not asked will be answered or have been answered in that webinar specifically. But I know there's been a couple questions on terms of life of the light bulb for the UV light. It is recommended that the UV light lasts for 1 year. That light bulb will remain on past that 1 year mark. However, it will not be as efficient and meet the claims that we stake or that we make in our literature and our specifications. So we do recommend after that 1 year time frame of being installed to replace that UV light.
Perfect. And that addresses our their next question about the life expectancy of a UV bulb.
Yep.
So moving on to some other questions coming in. We have some on a comparison. So an F100 or 200 paired with a UV light, how is that in comparison to just having an F300 with a UV light?
So the comparison is going to be, you're not going to have as high of a capture rate in terms of the microns of material that are in the air. So the F300 is really going to capture those really, really small particles all the way up to a MERV 16 rated that's in the air. F100, F200 are only going to get up to MERV 11 and MERV 13 associated with which one you go with. The UV light, again, when paired with either of those systems, F100 or F200 or 300, are going to take care of those molds, viruses, bacteria, things like that, regardless of whatever system that you're using for filtration.
Okay, great. Another quick question here is, can the F300 be sold in California?
Can the F300 be sold in California? I'm thinking that the intent behind that is maybe with Prop 65 in regards to making claims of ozone and things like that. I do not have any red flags going off of my head saying that it is not able to be sold in California. However, I do not have I don't have a high level of commitments to that. So let me double check on that.
Okay. Another question from the audience was that there's no test button on the filtration device, and what is the best way to show a customer that the filter's actually doing its job? I would recommend, we do have an air cycle program, which is a tool that can measure the particulate count as well as your temperature, your humidity, CO, CO2, and VOCs. If you did a report in that home prior to installing an upgraded filter and then doing a post report, that would show some differences because it does measure both. And that would be some great granular detail to actually provide them in documentation format.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
I wanted to add, earlier there was a question regarding the jumper to reduce the ozone in the F300. Another thing to consider when using an F300 in variable speed equipment where it runs at very low fan speed would be to possibly cut that jumper to reduce the ozone. The ozone created doesn't change, but if the airflow is very low, it can, for lack of better words, collect before it gets pushed into the ductwork. So it might be a good recommendation to reduce the ozone by cutting that jumper and potentially setting your lowest fan speed to something like 200 CFM to ensure that you have some good airflow.
Great point.
And I'm gonna expand on that a little bit, Chris. When you have higher end filtration systems like this, you know, it's not a bad idea to have your system running on continuous fan, just to continue, you know, promote air circulation throughout the home, so that when air is, you know, coming through the return duct, you know, it is continuously being run through that filter, and all of the stuff that's in your air is being captured within that filter and cleaned.
Perfect. Another question that came in from the chat was anything coming out in regards to putting a filter box underneath the equipment so we can have increased flow rates and interchangeable filters. I just want to make note that if you look at the installation instructions of our media air cleaners, you can put them underneath the air handler so they can support the weight. And if Chris or Ryan had anything to add, that would be much appreciated.
No, I don't have anything to add. I don't know, Chris, do you for that?
I really don't. I agree that the unit itself can handle the weight. The steel it's made with is made to support the weight of the system. I know a lot of dealers will use a right angle boot that's manufactured as kind of a generic device. If it fits a 4-inch media, you can still put in a F200 filter or an F100 filter to get the performance from that filter.
Perfect. Here's another question I believe we touched on. Does Honeywell still recommend replacing the post filters on the F300 every 6 months?
Yes. We want to remember there's a pre-filter, there are the actual electronic cells of the cleaner, and then there's a post filter. The pre-filter can be cleaned, the cells of the filter can be cleaned. That post filter you're going to want to take out and replace every 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Here's another question in regards to placing UV lights close to other IAQ products. So this is going to hit 2 questions. One attendee said that they had pulled out a filter that was damaged by UV, and what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen again? And the UV was installed on the return duct. And the other one is on our, if there's a steam humidifier installed in the supply duct, how far does the UV light have to be away from that?
So let's do the UV exposure. If there is, again, any UVC light that is in direct contact, you're going to want to make sure to either move that UV light. If it's on in the return, move it either later down the return or put it past a bend where that UV lamp isn't in direct contact with that filter. Otherwise, there is a chance of that light degrading the material in the filter. If that is not an option of moving the UV light within the return, you can use a shield or I believe it's a light shield is what they call. So, that's my two recommendations for that. In terms of humidifier after the UV light, so the recommendation that we have is to, if you can think of it in series here, the A coil, then the UV lights above that A coil at about a distance of 12 inches. And then you're going to want to make sure that your humidifier, whether it's a steam with an injection hose or the actual, like an evaporative that's mounted onto the side, is installed after that UV light, after being further down the supply.
Yeah, downstream is definitely recommended. The plastic or depending on the version, metal nozzle of our Resideo steam humidifiers are UV safe. But if you're using a supply or return mounted padded humidifier, those pads will also degrade by UV light too, so they should not be in direct view of the UV.
And how does that go in regards to the electronic air cleaner as far as distances? That was another question from the chat.
In terms of where to place the UV lights in correlation?
In correlation to an electronic air cleaner if your UV light is mounted on the return duct.
Again, as long as it's not in direct contact or direct line of sight from the UV lights, you're good.
Okay, great.
The one thing I've seen here in terms of, there seems to be kind of some questions around ozone production, and then as well as California and stuff there. I do want to comment and make clear, this device does produce ozone, as do many electronic air cleaners that are out there. That ozone production is under the federal regulations and guidelines. So we do, these products are, per those guidelines, safe to be in people's homes.
Okay, great. Another one, we installed a ton of the 12 by 20 electronic air cleaners back in the day. Any talk of bringing back that size?
The 12 by 20. I have not heard that one. So again, similar to I believe the 16 by 25. Let's work with your local sales rep, and we can figure out what that opportunity is and how to move forward.
Perfect. Do we currently make a MERV 16 carbon filter?
We do not currently make a MERV 16 carbon filter.
All right. Looks like we've touched on a lot of these questions. Just looking at some new ones that are coming in. Does Honeywell make a combination system that uses FR 8000, F1625, and UV lamp? So we don't currently make a combination system. However, you can get these systems, the filter box and the UV light, to complement each other. And you can purchase them separately and provide your customer with an enhanced package that way. Anything?
All right, Sean, we probably have time for one more question.
All right. Another question. Let's find the one from the chat here. Let's see. We've touched on a lot of these questions, and they're all great questions coming in.
I see a ton of questions regarding UV, guys. I really highly recommend that you check out that UV webinar that we made last week. I hope that will answer many of the questions that I've seen here. And then I do want to reiterate for the group, from a filtration standpoint, you want to make sure that you're not just looking at one of the variables that Chris mentioned in the presentation earlier in terms of just MERV rating, just pressure drop, or just filter life. It is really a combination and a mix of all three of those that really kind of define the performance of a filter, because each one of those plays off of one another. Going with a higher rated MERV with an associated higher rated pressure drop may not be, the right filter for your system. So you want to make sure it's really a balance of all three of those characteristics to get the right filter and the right product in the system and application that you're working with.
Great.
Thanks so much, everyone. As a reminder, please join us on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time to learn more about our products. Please join us next week as we cover the Prestige IAQ thermostat. And in response to what Ryan just mentioned earlier about our webinar session last week, we did cover the Honeywell Home branded UV product line, and we did record that session, and very shortly you will see that recording posted to the Resideo.com webinars landing page. And once that recording is posted, we will share that link with you in our follow-up email after today's session. We did cover most of the questions that did come in today, as well as many others. We encourage you to check out that webinar. And then also just one final reminder to those contractors who did not include your NATE ID on your registration form, please send your first name, your last name, and your NATE ID to homes.university@resideo.com within 1 week of today's live webinar to receive credit for attending this training. And then just two final things before we wrap up today. Once our training session is completed today, you will be prompted to complete a survey regarding our webinar session today. So please take a few moments to provide us with your feedback on the training you participated in today. We are looking forward to offering many more sessions in this webinar format going forward, and we want to hear your feedback, including what topics would you like us to cover. And then also as a reminder, if we didn't answer your question during the Q&A session, please be sure to include that question in your survey so that we can answer it in our special Q&A session that we're going to record later this week, and we will post that next week. And then finally, you are going to receive an email from us in a few days that includes some of the follow-up information that Chris was sharing today and a link to our new training website that's been referred to a few times, as well as the link to our recorded training sessions as well. Thank you all for joining us today in our Resideo webinar session on air filtration, and we look forward to having you next week as we discuss Prestige IAQ. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our special Q&A session on air filtration. We have our IAQ product manager, Ryan McCardle, joining us, along with Chris Levy and Sean Sullivan from our Resideo sales team, to answer several questions that were submitted during our air filtration webinars this week that we wanted to answer for all of you. So take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Jamie. Sean here, and this first question is for Chris. It's actually a two-part question. And the first part is, isn't a filter's main purpose to protect a homeowner's investment in their equipment and not just to clean the air quality? And second part, and what is the impact of a MERV rating on the life cycle of a system?
All right, thanks, Sean. So really, system filter has multiple jobs, one of which, of course, is to protect the equipment by filtering the air and keeping it running with clean air passing through. Another part of a filter's job is to clean that air that you breathe in your home. Remember earlier in our presentation, we talked about how your supply and return ductwork are really the lungs of your home, and really all the air you breathe passes through there at some point in time. So having good clean air quality should be equally as important. The effect of MERV rating on the life cycle of the system really is I'll answer it this way. The MERV rating is the efficiency of a filter capturing particles. It isn't really a effect on the life of the equipment. That is the pressure drop and how the system is performing as the air passes through the filter and into the system. So remember our slide, we have to maintain a good balance for the health of the home and the health of the equipment between MERV rating, or the capture rate, the load, and the pressure of the filter, pressure drop across the filter.
Great, thanks, Chris. The second question is for you as well. And we talked about the F200 being able to capture virus carriers. What is a virus carrier, and is it the same thing as the virus itself?
No, the virus carrier is the particulate that the virus lives on that is floating around through the air. So as we mentioned at the beginning, the coronavirus is one that is transmitted through water droplets in the air and through cough or sneeze. And these particulates are things that are caught at the smallest MERV, I'm sorry, not MERV scale, but micron scale. And that's captured at the best efficiency through the F200 and also the F300.
Great, thanks.
All right, so our next question, Sean, is the effectiveness of a filter being affected by velocity over the air moving through it?
So that's an interesting question. The effectiveness of a filter is not really impacted by the velocity. However, if you don't have any velocity, so that being said, like if your system blower fan is not on, then the filter is just sitting in the airstream, but we don't have any air going through it to be strained. Okay. If we have an overabundance of velocity, you know, that's you're going to increase, as you increase velocity, you also increase pressure drop. However, the velocity doesn't impact the capture rate of the filter.
Excellent. So Ryan, I have one here for you. Would using EAC and UV light together create excessive ozone?
That's a great question, Chris. So excessive is kind of a subjective term, right? So we don't have really a standard to measure up against that, but I can, you know, maybe provide a little context around each of those products individually and kind of explain to you what the ozone production of them is each. So the electronic air cleaner in normal operation is below and meets the you know, the codes and standards and regulations for ozone production. If you do have a homeowner that is maybe a little bit more sensitive to ozone, we do offer a low ozone setting on that electronic air cleaner. However, just to be mindful that if you do enable that setting, the efficiency of the electronic air cleaner is reduced. So moving on to the UV lights, you know, we can't say officially, but we don't produce any ozone with those. But however, I can, you know, let the audience know here that we are in the process right now of working to obtain the certification for our UV lights actually not producing any ozone at all. So.
Excellent. So Sean, I have actually two questions for you. The first one is, where and when is pressure drop measured? And the second is, if you don't have space for a 4-inch media filter in your application and you just can't put it in, what can they use?
Great, thanks, Chris. So on the first question, where and when do you check pressure drop across a filter? So the place you'll want to check it at is pre and post filter and get a differential reading. So on the return duct, right before the filter would be your one port, and right in the blower cabinet right after the filter would be your second, and the difference between the two would be your differential pressure. It's important to know this because when you're moving air across something that's actually straining the air and filtering it, you will have a pressure drop, and that's normal. However, based on the activity in the home, that pressure drop can add up quicker than others if you have a lot of activity going on. And whenever we get to a 1/2 inch of water column of pressure drop, we recommend swapping out that filter. So I would say check it on a regular basis, and that'll depend on the activity of what's going on in the home. And, you know, at least on every maintenance tune-up to check that pressure drop if you're not already swapping out the filter. The second question, if you can't fit a media air cleaner, what's the other options? And there's a couple things here. So if you can't fit the 4-inch media air cleaner, you could still go with a 1-inch filter device, and that will protect the equipment from dust and particulates. You know, if a higher MERV rating is actually going to capture more particles and particles of smaller sizes. But if you can't fit it, we do recommend at least putting a 1-inch filter in. The other option would be if your return duct system design allows for you to put a filter device in the return grill air inlet. We do offer 2 styles with multiple sizes of each. These are the FC40, which is a MERV 10 equivalent, and the FC313, which is a MERV 13 equivalent. So if you have size restrictions, I would recommend looking at where the return grill inlets are, and if you can install one of these style filters.
Awesome.
All right, guys, the next question that we have is really an application-based question. And Chris, I know you're an expert in this area, so I'm going to direct this to you. The question is, when you are not heating or cooling your home, how often do you recommend cycling your air, or do you recommend having your fan on all the time?
Well, that is a good question. And really, a lot of that is personal preference for the homeowner. But what I see being recommended by the heating and cooling contractors that I work with is basically if you have a newer piece of equipment with a DC drive blower motor, then you're not using much energy, and they recommend having those blowers running continuously for better air circulation, which will give you more even temperatures around the home and also filter your air constantly. So they recommend it running and set it up to run between 150 and 200 CFM during circulation mode. If you have an older system that does not have a DC drive blower motor, then we really see the recommendation being to go into circulate mode from your thermostat control. Resideo thermostats will cycle the air to equate to about 25% of runtime out of every hour. And that takes into account any heating and cooling calls, but when there are none, then it'll just run the fan alone to equal 25%.
Thanks, Chris. Ryan, this next question is for you. During our presentation, we talked a lot about the different options for filtration devices, and this is an application question in regards to what our best combination is between utilizing UV lights with either electronic air cleaners or media air cleaners.
Yeah, so best is really dependent upon the application and the needs and desires for the homeowner. So if you have an application or a homeowner that is looking for, from a filtration solution, is looking for, really, really high efficiency, low pressure drop, and even, a filter solution that is reusable or washable as opposed to disposable and replaceable, if those are the needs and the desires that they want, maybe the F300 is a good solution for them. If, however, they have different needs and desires, or maybe some sensitivity to ozone, the F100 or 200 would maybe potentially be a better solution for them. If you have homeowners that are looking to, keep that coil clean, keep viruses, mold, bacteria out of the air, obviously then recommend to them, in addition to that filtration solution, a UV lamp. In addition to that, if they want to take care of and remove those VOCs in the air, then you want to have a step up above that and then go with our our product that includes a UV lamp, as well as that air bright product that will help eliminate and remove those VOCs from the air.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
All right, our last question, Ryan, is how long is the life of an F300, and are there replacement parts available?
Yep, so we do offer a 5-year warranty on the F300. So that's our warranty that we offer with the product itself. I can also comment on replaceable parts, that there are standard replaceable parts for power boards, cells, and things like that. However, I also want to highlight that there is a clean coil guarantee that we offer with this product in conjunction with our UV lights, where we will offer up to 10 years a clean coil guarantee, as long as there is an F300 and a UV light installed into a system and properly maintained during the life of that 10 years. So that, make sure you're doing your annual maintenance on the filter, cleaning and replacements if needed, as well as, cleaning or replacing that bulb, that UV bulb every year.
Thank you, Ryan, Chris, and Sean, for answering these questions in this special session. We look forward to having you all joining us for a future Resideo training session. Thanks, everyone.